This episode is dedicated to Adam and to Nathan. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Sci-Fi and Fantasy Readalong. I am ATN.
I am Yule.
And I'm DM Phil.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Oh man, wonderful.
Yeah, so we're back for part 2.
You call it part 2, book 2, something like that?
A good part. I liked it.
The Encyclopedists.
I liked this chapter a lot. I mean, I liked it because it was very, very frustrating for me. And I know said that doesn't really make sense other than it was enthralling by its sheer annoyance. But I have my other, we'll get to those reasons later. But it's one of those things I can really identify with, which made it very real, which means humanity hasn't changed in, 100,000 years or whatever the case may be.
At least.
In our last episode, we covered part 1, in which Gul Dornick arrived on Trantor to take a job with the great Harry Seldon, only to find himself on trial. This episode, as I said, is just part 2. It's the Encyclopedists, which takes place 50 years later on another planet entirely, the planet Terminus. Do you guys have anything before we get started?
No, I was just going to add on that Terminus is where Harry Seldon and his people ultimately have retired to so that they can go and complete their encyclopedia.
They didn't.
No, they didn't retire. They escaped.
Maybe I shouldn't say retire. I knew as I was saying retire, that was the wrong word.
I mean, did you guys get any indication that Gul Dornick ever showed up here, or that Harry Seldon ever showed up here?
No, and I did want to mention that. I was a little disappointed that there was no continuity, because I mean there was, it's been 50 years, but he was in his early 20s, so he very well could have been alive.
He should still be alive, Gul Dornick. He should be in his 70s. Harry Seldon obviously died 2 years after the first chapter, or the first part.
Right, but I'm thinking, this was written in 1942, so the average lifespan there was significantly less. No way somebody's going to live to be 75.
Well, he did say that nobody lives past 100, or essentially. That, the expectation was that everybody alive today would be dead a century hence, meaning that anybody born today would still be dead in 100 years.
Okay, yeah.
So Gul Dornick could still very well be alive, but I get the sensation that he never showed up on this planet. That, in fact, only one actual psychohistorian showed up on this planet.
There might actually be some truth there, and just to make stuff up, he was never actually hired to work for Seldon. It was the morning he was going to start his job, he got arrested. So did he ever really start his job? No, he never.
They went back to the university together after the trial. I have to assume that he continued to work for Seldon. I have to assume so.
All right, hold on a second.
Well, at this point, if you have to choose between exile, working for Seldon, and finding another job someplace else, what do? And you've got this doom and gloom scenario with a guy you completely believe in, that the whole empire is going to collapse, and I could live in paradise for, another 50 years, or I could go to exile on this know-nothing planet and work for Harry Seldon. I think I'll do that.
An excerpt from the Encyclopedia Galactica. The entry is Terminus. It is a remote, isolated, resource-poor planet, and that's an understatement, right? And then also on this planet, the rise of Salvor Hardin, ... into the future.
First of a great line of...
Yeah, exactly. ...
But no, that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's teasy stuff. Exactly, it's teasy stuff. Are you guys ready to start the chapter, though?
Yeah.
All right, chapter 1. So Louis Perrin is busy in his office arranging the production of the encyclopedia. 50 years they have been on the planet Terminus. They have 5 years to go before Volume 1 is published, and thereafter it will be one volume every 10 years on a cadence.
Along with addendums and stuff like that.
Something gets interrupted based on the very beginning of the book, when we encountered the Encyclopedia Galactica 116th edition, published in 1020. So there's a little bit of iffiness about the math. They obviously rushed one or two of the issues, but it doesn't really matter. It lines up pretty well with having been, I think it's like 100 years too long or something like that. Nevertheless, Louis Perrin is busy working when Salvor Hardin arrives for an appointment with news.
Hardin comes with the news that there is a new,
King.
Royal king of Anacreon.
He was previously the royal governor of the prefect of Anacreon, and he has kinged himself.
Well, so what? What does that mean?
Means they're claiming independence from the empire.
Yeah.
Well, just to go back a little bit, and I mean all the way back to the very end of part 1, which we did last week, 2 weeks ago, where one of the last things Harry Seldon says was, he's like, when the time is right and the conditions are correct, we will push Anacreon to secede and therefore start clicking over dominoes.
Right, and I assumed that was like far into the future, but apparently the rebellion on Anacreon is not that far into the future.
Well, didn't he perceive that everything was like, it was moving faster than he had previously thought or something like that?
Wait, no, what?
No, I think I have a better understanding of it now. So Harry Seldon and the models he creates, he understands which way things are going, but his goal is to actually manipulate the flow of events so that they happen exactly when he wants them to happen.
Okay, all right, that makes more sense for me, especially in light of this chapter.
That I had to go back and reread it, but it said that his agents would basically nudge and prod to make sure that things happen exactly when they were supposed to, not before, not after.
He, in some way, maybe foresaw this this guy wanting to become king, I guess, of Anacreon.
Yeah. In a general sense, he probably had this model that said, oh, yeah, somewhere between, like 40 and 60 years, things are going to really start falling apart with the outer colonies. But we want it to happen exactly now so that they can plan for it.
Okay, so the news of, what is it called when you pull yourself out of an agreement?
Treason?
No.
Secession.
Thank you. So essentially, they have pulled out. Terminus is now cut off from Trantor and Vega because of it. And Anacreon may obstruct the Foundation's supply chain. That's why Salvor Hardin is here delivering this news. That's what he thinks is the implication of this man making himself king.
And their supply chain is already pretty pathetic as it is, right?
Do you remember how Trantor was described as having 20 agricultural worlds that they were dependent on for food? Well, Terminus is similarly strapped of resources for what they need, right? They don't have any metals, like none. How do you have a planet with no metals?
I guess it depends on the rarefaction.
That sounds smart, but I'm guessing somebody made this planet.
No, I don't think anybody made it. I think
they made it out of pumice and spit.
Well, something like that. It's the rarefaction of the crust led to any metal that existed sinking all the way to the core and is generally inaccessible.
But we know they have like agriculture there and stuff like that, right?
Something like that, yeah.
They talk about bartering with potatoes later. So like
yeah.
They don't have, it's just like metals and things of power.
Well,
but they also don't seem like they're really a colony that cares about that type of thing necessarily.
No, they're apolitical, as Perrin points out to Hardin. Is like, they don't have to worry about supply chains and stuff like that. The Emperor's going to take care of them. They just don't need to worry about it. And like immediately I was kind of, wait a minute. Didn't the Emperor kick them off of his planet, his house? He's like, get out of here. Go to the edge of the galaxy. I never want to hear from you again. Why the hell would he be supporting them at all?
Well, because nominally he agrees with the idea of the encyclopedia, which is a vast reservoir, an entire complete reservoir of human knowledge. I think that's worth something. He just didn't want their vile politics to affect him and undermine his society.
But they're apolitical. Anyway, it was something that just popped up into my head, that the Emperor doesn't really care about the Foundation, never did.
Well, no, but eliminating 100,000 people would be politically unsound, so he just exiles them. To them, it's exile. But I think the idea is a good one. He just doesn't want them interacting with the populace. And I was thinking about, it took me a while to figure this stuff out, but I think I'm right, of course I do, is that Harry Seldon chose this planet because no one else wants it. And nobody's going to fight over it.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Right.
Yeah. Seems
As we'll get into.
Did you get some indication from that in this chapter? Is this from future reading?
No, in the beginning, I thought it was like what Yule said, where it was like Khan was sent to SETI Alpha 5 or 6. Which one is it?
He said in the last section that we read, in section 1, he said that they had desired Terminus.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know how he engineered that, but there's a point where he wanted to be exactly at that point. And I don't know if it was because of all the macro economics of that area, because there was nothing of value there. There was nothing of value on Terminus.
Well, let's discuss why Harry Seldon wanted this planet at the very, very end, because by the end of this section, we'll understand completely why he wanted it. Right? It becomes clear. What else from this section, though? We have information about the Journal, which is their media outlet. Sounds like a newspaper to me. They want to celebrate the 50th anniversary of their arrival there with the opening of the vault. This is a thing, and they're like, let's celebrate it like it's a big deal. And Perrin is like, no, it's not a big deal. It's for the trustees only, and we'll reveal what needs to be revealed. But he's still very much in like the authoritarian mindset that like they're there for a scientific mission, they're going to fulfill the mission, and politics be damned.
Well, okay, just to be a little more clear, the vault is Harry Seldon's vault, which he put together and put a time lock on it, that it cannot be opened until 50 years from now. So
yeah, it's a time capsule.
Yeah, it's not just a time capsule, because you can dig that up any time. This is like locked down solid until the precise time when it's supposed to open. But I got a little more out of this. When I first read this, I mean, Hardin impressed me from the beginning. And I know there's even the foreshadowing where it said, oh, first in a great line of ... But there's two factions here. One, there was Hardin, which immediately seemed to be self-aware and capable of higher logical analysis.
He's the mayor, by the way.
He is the mayor. He's a politician. That's true. But he immediately impressed me with his ability to evaluate situations fairly well. Whereas this Perrin?
Yeah, like Parisian.
He just seemed like this secluded, stuck in his ways, didn't want to be bothered. I have a task, don't bother me with anything else kind of guy. And just doesn't even want to be bothered by anything outside of his task, which is the creation of the Encyclopedia Galactica.
Well, I mean, he is a disciple of, I guess, Seldon, and he wants it to continue. Maybe all else is unimportant when it comes to that one task. And it's singular, but it also is understood that it's going to be bigger than his entire life span.
Definitely.
You know, it's going to go on longer than him. He's just a cog that's continuing it.
Well, oh yeah, well that's a point. Yes, he's always talking about this is for the future, but he's never thinking about the future. He's only thinking about what were Harry Seldon's last orders. He doesn't think for himself.
No, he is not thinking for himself at all.
So, last piece of news, an envoy from Anacreon will arrive in 2 weeks' time.
And Perrin he's like, what for? And Hardin was just like, I'll give you one guess, because Hardin has already figured it out. Because he knows which way the wind is blowing, and he's very sensitive to that. And like I said, Perrin has just got his head in the sand.
He definitely does. He's denying that there's even a problem.
I don't know, man. The dice are rolling. I can feel it.
Anselm U. Roderick, envoy of Anacreon, arrives and is received with great pomp and circumstance by Hardin the mayor. Roderick is subjected to a tour of the Foundation, and then there's a formal dinner where there's a lot of discussion going on between the mayor, Hardin,
Perrin,
who is the board. He's like the president of the board of trustees, I believe is what he is.
Chairman of the board of trustees.
Chairman. There we go. And then, of course, this guy from Anacreon, who's a soldier, and all he's doing is telling stories about his military conquests. That's what he's doing the entire time.
Because he just got back from, like, war, like you were saying. Yeah.
Blowing up ships and stuff, yeah. He's having a good old time out there in space killing people.
Now, there is a crowd of people that are here to cheer this guy, right?
Yeah, when he arrives, yes, it's pomp and circumstance.
It's not just the mayor that's there, it's the citizenry is there, and they're out.
They're excited.
This is like somebody that's visiting. That we don't get visitors around here very much.
But it's so funny because Hardin like insults this guy to his face, and he doesn't get it. They're like, yes, the peasantry, the normal people are all excited. And this guy Roderick is like, what are they so excited about? And he's like, they get so few members of higher nobility visiting the planet. It's like he recognizes that this guy in the grand scheme of things isn't that important, and he's throwing it in his face. It's hilarious.
And this guy, as he is examining and having these conversations, is specifically picking apart how this society is. He, like when you're saying you don't have any peasantry, he asks, of the people. He says, or nobility. What's the deal here? And he's like totally picking apart pieces as they're going along. I'll pick out a few others later on.
The one thing I get out is that Roderick hasn't done his homework. He's asking all these questions about the planet, but he doesn't have a clue about how anything on Terminus is carried out or taking place, or why they're there, or how things are run. And he seems to just go in this and be winging it. And I just have a hard time that if he was here on a mission, he'd be winging it. Here, clearly he's not here on vacation. He's got a mission. He walked into this kind of blindly, it seems.
Is he just there to take over? I mean, he's like, I'm coming here so I can lay down the groundwork so that we can just come on in and like march all over this place if we want.
He probably is that guy, but at the same time, Philip's right. He should be better informed than he is.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he's just coming back from war,
exactly.
What do you know? I mean, you're going to the BFE.
But how is Asimov supposed to explain these things to us otherwise? Right?
Well, it's clear he's militaristic because, again, like Yul said, he was talking about his military fighting and beating up the passive farmers of the other. I don't know, right? I honestly don't know. But apparently there's this exchange, like people do handshakes here, but they exchange weapons. And Hardin, who had to find a weapon just to be able to do this.
It wasn't any weapon. It was a blaster.
Yeah, that's what Roderick gave, right? He gave a blaster, which, oh my God, it's like as soon as I heard blaster, I heard it was like Star Wars. But apparently Hardin had to go find a weapon to be able to go exchange with this guy. But Hardin did not fail to notice that there was another bulge in this guy's jacket. And I don't think it was a cyst.
He's got something there. I get that. But like, I wouldn't put a gun in my shoulder.
Well, I just figure secret weapon, and he's militaristic.
Yeah, he's got something up his sleeve, basically, I think is what's going on. So Hardin, ever the politician, is trying to get information out of this guy.
Well, Hardin was very clever. When you reread this, he listens most of the time, but then he speaks up and asks very pointed questions. He basically outmaneuvers Roderick linguistically and gets him to basically reveal his real intent.
And he was able to do that because, like you said, he was able to be quiet, but that's because Perrin and, what's his name, Roderick they had a real problem with each other.
They did not enjoy each other's company at all, yeah.
Not at all. I mean, even to the point where, like, Roderick is, again, he's like really hammering home at his detest of these people. He's talking about this encyclopedia, and that's really all that they're here for. This is very interesting. It's a strange occupation for grown men. He's all, what good is it? I'm assuming not only is he speaking for himself, he's probably speaking for the people that are coming in after him.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a jock dealing with nerds, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it spells it out so clearly, Yul. It's like he has no regard whatsoever for scientific and literary knowledge by itself.
So what are the intentions of Anacreon as related to Terminus?
Well, it goes a few ways. At first, they're like, it sounds like they want taxes. They just want some money so that they can protect this colony from, Smyrna? Is that what it was?
Something like that. It's not important.
And they're like, hey, we have no affiliation with you or them, is what Hardin says. It sounds like there is a belief, whether it's financially, that Terminus could help Anacreon out. And if not that, I think it ultimately then ends up like, well, you could give us land. Our rich people could come here for vacation time.
Add to their estates.
And, that doesn't sound like it's a thing that's a big deal. And then the conversation turns to nuclear energy and how in Terminus we have a nuclear power plants, but they need more plutonium.
Yeah.
So they need no more plutonium. But what we find out from Roderick is that they're kind of wiped out of all their nuclear energy, basically, in the wars that they've been having, right?
I don't know when they lost it, but they definitely have lost their nuclear power. And what Hardin figures out, it was a trick, basically, is when he said that we need some more plutonium to keep our, nuclear power going. They don't use plutonium. They haven't used plutonium in ages, but it didn't ring any alarms for this Roderick fellow.
He's saying they haven't been using nuclear energy for a long time because they don't know that also.
Right.
That's right.
They lost the ability long enough ago that they don't even know that anymore.
But he was trying to convey to him that
they're a nuclear power.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a threat.
It was.
Well, there were threats going on all over the place.
It's endless. It's over and over again. It's like where it's Perrin or it's Hardin. But Hardin did it tactically. But they both said it's like, well, we're actually a protectorate of the Empire and the Emperor or whatever they said.
Perrin is claiming that the Foundation is an apolitical organization. It's supported directly by the Emperor. You don't want to mess with us. But obviously that's, Anacreon doesn't really care about that. They just want taxes.
I don't think that's all they wanted.
That's what he said, is like, you're going to be a protectorate. You're going to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't have a choice.
We're going to force you to become a protectorate. It's extortion, essentially.
That sounds like annexation.
It's a protection racket run by the mafia, right? It's exactly that.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. I was also thinking that Anacreon is they're an entity that's looking for a purpose. And by reaching out to this land and maybe taking it over, it gives them a sense of like a reason for being. Maybe that's a little,
I think that they said that it was a strategic location. And that their enemies on Smyrna had two other holdings that had belonged to Anacreon in the past, and this place was strategic, and that's why they wanted it. But ultimately, they're just they're the most powerful force in the area, and they're just gobbling up other worlds as they can because people can't resist them.
Yes, it's just like SimCity. They're expansionist and militaristic.
So what we're learning out of this chapter is that the Empire is dissolving. They're losing their technology, at least out in the periphery. That's what's going on.
Isn't that exactly what Harry Seldon was talking about? I mean, everything. He's talking about the collapse of society, right?
Yes.
And that to gain that knowledge back faster, that's what this encyclopedia is. And we're already watching down the line, even the Empire or whoever is king of this
it has
right
begun.
Now, it has already started.
It has begun.
Exactly. The forgetfulness has begun.
So one other thing that we learn in here, which I thought was pretty interesting, is that we get a born date for nuclear power being 50,000 years old. So just hold on to that number because we're going to come back to it in a chapter or two.
That's true, but I gave that some thought. It's like, I mean, he's a scientist. He's very smart, but I mean, he's wagging a number out there.
Yes, but even if it is a rough approximation, we can learn a thing or two about it, but we're going to talk about it in 2 chapters. Chapter 3. Turns out Hardin... I can't read my own writing. Hold on.
I don't know how you read that.
I don't know how you read it either. Jesus.
Doesn't matter. Turns out Hardin has a controlling interest in the journal after all, and he's using the media to gain a seat at meetings of the Board of Trustees.
A whole bunch of men in one room.
Yes.
Yeah,
again with the lack of the women. Noted.
But it took a lot of effort for him to get invited because he pressured them for a long time. He pressured the board for a long time and got nowhere. Then he used the journal as his conduit for pressuring them even further, and finally they relented, and they led him into these secret meetings.
Right. Secret meetings. They're not really secret meetings. They're just, he has no business there, right? He's not on the board of trustees.
He's not even really a scientist, right?
No.
No, he is.
He's just a mayor.
No,
well,
he's not.
He is. He's a psychologist.
He has poor training, and that's not revealed yet.
He has poor training in psychology. He's rudimentary knowledge. He can help you on a website if you have problems with depression.
Well, the point is, these board meetings have been closed meetings for 50 years, and he finally had to, force his way in, which, to me, is a credit to him. That he's like, the dice are rolling. I've got to get in there, and I've got to start making things happen because these guys are never going to do anything.
Right. They don't even recognize that there is a problem, let alone that they need to act on it. So the thing that is revealed in the meeting is that a chancellor of the empire is due to arrive on Terminus in 2 weeks' time. The argument from the previous chapter is continued, the argument being that the Emperor will step in. No, he won't. Yes, he will. No, he won't. And obviously, I don't think he will because we know that the Foundation left Trantor in kind of bad terms, forced out.
I gave a lot of thought to this, and I was thinking about it. So the fact that they were given exile instead of
death,
which was certainly on the table, and there were no repercussions to killing 100,000 people because you're an empire, right? They were almost encouraged to choose exile. They were encouraged because they were given the choice, right?
You don't choose death.
I wouldn't.
Nobody does. I mean, it's just not really a thing. If you've got the option of just scooting along and heading out into the deeps of space, that's what you do.
Well, I thought it was complete shenanigans that the Chancellor of the Empire, out of 25 million planets out there, would take time out of his day to come to this planet. Sorry, several days.
In 2 weeks' time.
No, he would never do that.
I think that it's not the Chancellor of the Empire. I think it is a Chancellor of the Empire.
That still may be true.
He's a functionary, and that's it. And he's just one of many.
The point is, nobody would do that unless there was a logical reason. And
I know what the logical reason is.
Well, to my logical reason is that the Encyclopedia Galactica was important. Right? That's why he's making the effort. That's why they put them out here. That's why they recognize the benefit of doing this and put them out here so that they would be protected in the middle of nowhere where no one else would mess with them.
I don't see it. I don't think so.
I think the Empire recognized the importance of this from the beginning.
I don't think so. I think that the Chancellor's coming out here because he was already coming out here. And he's like, I might as well stop in on these ding-dongs also. Let's move on.
But if moving is instantaneous, then one planet is the same as another throughout the entire galaxy, and you're not going to waste 2 days on this planet unless there's some benefit to it.
He's already coming out here, and they're asking for help. So, why not just stop by? If travel's instantaneous, what does it bother him?
True. Okay, so maybe he had a personal agenda, which we will get to.
He definitely has a personal agenda, but it's not right now.
Okay, yeah, he had a personal agenda. That might explain it.
So at this meeting of the Board of Trustees, Hardin continues to stress the fact that Terminus must fend for themselves, that they cannot count on the Emperor. The Empire itself is stagnating to death, and we need to do something about it before it affects us as well. And this is when we meet Jord Farah.
You call him out specifically because?
Because he is the person that says something interesting.
Okay, fair enough.
Just before we get to him, there is the conversation where it's very important to Prin that he keeps continuing with the encyclopedia. All that matters is that the encyclopedia keeps going forward.
Those were his orders.
We've lost some time. We can't get that time back. We can't lose any more. We have to be on schedule, that type of thing. It gets to the point in the conversation where it almost is not feeling like science anymore. And I know, Philip, you said about, in private, this is feeling very biblical. The continuance of the word of Harry Seldon and continuing this encyclopedia is so important that they have to keep on going. No other thing is important whatsoever as far as he's concerned.
Like an article of faith.
That feels like something from on high has been said, and you have to keep continuing it. Or, as we were saying during a break, maybe college.
I get it. When you said it the first time, I didn't get it, but now I see where you're going. I think is that it's become like a cult.
There is a cult mentality for sure in this, and it's nice because like we know where they're going with, or where it started with. It's how, this is all about the future and how we can stave off elimination faster or bounce back from it faster with all of this knowledge. And, it's just, that's something that I've been thinking about as I've been reading this.
I think you nailed it. I think that the belief in Hardin and belief in his predictions has become cult-like. I think you nailed it.
Selden, but even more important, as Etienne was saying, Perrin has let us in on some information that when that vault is opened up, there is going to be a message from Harry Seldon, something that has been tucked away for 50 years. At this moment where things are so very critical and important, our leader is going to come back and tell us what to do.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you are so right, Yul. It all makes sense now.
So that's right. Jord Farah is the person that brings this up.
Oh, it wasn't Perrin. Sorry.
No, Perrin is a firm believer that there is no problem.
Sorry, I couldn't remember which character.
That's Asimov's fault for not drawing clear characters. None of the members of the boards of trustee are very well described, including Perrin, who is basically the main player in that board. Like, we don't get a description of him. We get nothing.
That's true. That's true. And
keep all that in an 18. It's fine. Everybody will get it.
To sidestep, just to sidestep a little bit, it's just like I when I read this, I have to keep in mind that Isaac Asimov was 22 years old when he read this. He wrote this. Sorry, he was fairly inexperienced as a writer, and I think that's very telling in a lot of his things. It's a good story, but it
isn't perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
We will have a very fleshed out character, at least in the way he speaks next chapter, though.
Oh my God! Unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I would argue that Hardin is pretty well developed. I mean, as much as I bemoaned Gall Dornick from last section, like, I feel that, he was pretty poorly drawn, but I find that Hardin is pretty well drawn. Like, I like the way his mind works. I can see this man operating in his environment, and it feels natural and right to me.
It does.
But as Yul pointed out, Jord Farah has reminded everyone that the vault will open soon, and perhaps Seldon solve the answer to their crisis. We have a member of the board that doesn't believe that there is a crisis. That's Perrin. And then we've got Jord Farah, who's been halfway convinced by Hardin that there is a problem, but maybe Seldon will solve it for them. And then there's Hardin, who is like, no, we need to do this ourselves.
Yeah, but another board member, Sut, said, it's quite evident that Mayor Hardin is a professional cynic. And have you ever heard the phrase, like, what's the difference between an optimist and a cynic? It's like a cynic is an optimist with more experience. Hardin knows what's up, and these guys aren't listening. And their refusal to listen bothers me.
It's not this chapter where Hardin talks about the people, right?
What do you mean?
He talks about the people, and he's like, they don't give a damn about the encyclopedia. They care about living their freaking lives.
It's 9/10 of the population doesn't work for the foundation.
Exactly.
Their support staff.
There's a lot of there's a lot of fight for the people of this world now.
Well, if you were a politician, that's what you would say. I represent the people, and what I want is what the people want.
I think it's clear that these scientists are not paying attention to what the people want.
Well, the scientists definitely are not there to pander to the populace. They are there to make this encyclopedia.
Well, the running of the world to make this encyclopedia occur has to deal with not only the people on the planet, but also the people that are coming in, and that's why we're in this situation we're in.
I don't think people are immigrating to this planet. I think that they're like, Terminus, get out of here.
Well, in 50 years, they went from 100,000 to a million, so their fecundity is legendary.
Funny.
I would want to know what Seldon has to say, even if I was Hardin.
Absolutely.
And a cynic.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, come on. I'm talking all this doomsaying stuff. Well, he's not as bad as Seldon.
That's
but
true.
Selden was a doomsayer also.
Raven Selden.
Yeah, I mean, this is Raven Hardin is all.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I guess I get frustrated because, like, right now, because yes, you've got 150,000 encyclopedia loyalists working on the encyclopedia, but guess what? I mean, you've got to have support for them. You've got to have logistics. You've got to have networking. You've got to have all these other components to help them do their job, and
someone's got to grow the potatoes.
That too.
Somebody's got to work at the McDonald's.
I mean, and we're seeing that in real life now. How important those mediocre jobs are in real life compared to the important jobs
And
sometimes.
the important people that fill those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a soft spot for the trash man of the world.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody deserves to make a lot of money, it's probably the trash man of the world.
oh, they do.
Yeah, but I mean, talk about an important job.
No kidding.
But it doesn't think like, nobody thinks that's an important job.
Well,
it's not an Encyclopedia Galactica.
They call them sanitation engineers for a reason.
Whatever.
Hey, I got to tell you the story. I used to work at a place so vile that I would have to take the trash out, and the trash man would refuse to collect it. It was so vile.
Is this your cactus collection?
No, I do tip them, by the way, for taking away my cactus. No, I used to work at I'm not going to tell you, actually.
That's a good story. Thanks.
Hey, the point is, I was making minimum wage to haul this to the side corridor, and they refused to pick it up because it was so vile.
And they're getting paid the big bucks.
All right. So Hardin is revealed in this chapter to have some basic psychohistory training. But he was only able to get the theory. That was all that they would train. So he decided, screw this, I'm going into politics. And he says it's basically the same thing. And this is an echo of part 1, where Selden said that the Emperor had an innate sense of psychohistory and its veracity.
Well, just to say it a little more better, it's like
Grammar.
Did he say more better?
He did, yeah.
That's something I should be saying.
Yeah, he's going to say it more better than I could say it.
I don't know if you can.
I don't either.
I know you're going to put this in there because...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's going in.
It ain't coming out.
It's definitely going in.
No, he called it a psychological engineer, which I thought it was like a euphemism for a politician as soon as I read that. And then he came out and said it. He said, oh my God, yeah, I didn't want to become a zoologist. Instead, I went to politics. It's practically the same thing. I'm sorry, I was tickled pink. It's the science.
No, it was hilarious.
It's the science of manipulating people.
Yeah, politics.
There's a reason people don't like those people.
Well, there is. But yet we spend $50 an hour to talk to them.
Politicians? All right, so 2 weeks later, Lord Dorwin has arrived and is touring the Foundation when Hardin catches up. Give me a description of Lord Dorwin, if you don't mind, since he is rather well described.
For older listeners, I would say Elmer Fudd. He's a guy who doesn't have any R's. Think of a speech impediment. And it is, he just drops his R's. But not in a Cockney way.
You know what it reminded me of is the way that the Spaniards speak. Because I think it was Ferdinand had a speech impediment. And so it became commonplace. This is the history of that, as I understand it, as it was told to me. Could be a lie, I don't really know. But anyway, supposedly he had a speech impediment, so the court took on the manner of speaking, and so this guy shows up with this affectation. He speaks with a speech impediment on purpose. He drops his R's on purpose. He has just come from Anacreon, so he's had dealings on their planet. So he didn't just come out here to deal with Terminus. He came out here to do something with Anacreon, and he's coming over here too. Mm-hmm. Right. He's described ridiculously, though. Like, he's got these huge sideburns that he's fondling constantly, and
they're fake too. They're like rugs.
It's
like
ridiculous.
A toupee of sideburns or something like that.
Yeah, he's kind of a fop. There's one component here, like literally the fourth word is like Lord Dorwin took snuff. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that's right. He's inhaling tobacco through his nose, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
They describe his snuff box as like wooden, and it has like ornate
He
art
says it's
on
poorly
it, but
made.
it's crap.
Yeah, it's poorly made.
Poorly made.
Yeah, that's what he said. Overadorned and poor workmanship.
Which is probably a metaphor for the guy, right?
Sure. I mean, he's supposed to be a bit of a doof, right?
He seems like a doof, right?
Uh-huh.
He seems like a doof, but we will find out later that he is not.
Oh, and going on to the R's thing, like you said, it's maybe fake.
It is definitely fake. He gets really excited about archaeology later on, and when he is excited, he pronounces all of his R's just fine.
Right, exactly.
It is a little frustrating, but I guess, when you, to put it in a different way, Perrin has met with the Chancellor and kind of given Hardin the runaround, and Hardin has to track them down in this secret meeting.
It's not a secret meeting. He's on tour. He's being given a tour of the Foundation, and Hardin let him out of his sight. That's all. It wasn't sneaky.
I sense sneakiness there, but that's okay, and that it's backed up by later stuff. But Hardin is listening to Perrin and the Chancellor talk, Lord Dorwin. He's like, quite a love fest. Or love feast.
Oh, yeah.
It's like quite a love feast. Every time that Lord Darwin speaks, Perrin is just like fawning over every single word that he says.
So essentially, it's a character flaw of Perrin's.
Yes, precisely. But Hardin goes into it seeing things the way they really are, which is, this guy's a scammer.
Hardin is trying to get information out of this guy, and he keeps deflecting every time he tries to get information from the Chancellor, Dorwin. Dorwin just says, oh, we're not talking about business today. We'll do that tomorrow.
When they talk about psychology, Dorwin says, oh, have you read the old lecturers, the old people?
You're talking about archaeology.
Even before that, Hardin isn't even playing hardball. He's just mentioning things. As soon as Lord Dorwin gets any sort of push from Hardin, he deflects. And I love this line. It says, and I'm going to quote it in English, not in Lord Dorwin's...
Dorwin speak.
Exactly. And he was railing upon Anacreon, and he says, lack of the most elementary requirements of the cultured gentleman, the absence of the most fundamental necessities for comfort and convenience. And Hardin parries, and he says, yeah, unfortunately, they have all the elementary requirements for warfare and all the fundamental necessities for destruction. So Hardin is like nailing this guy, and he backs off. He deflects. He's like, oh, we're not going to talk about business today.
But he does want to talk about archaeology.
Yes.
He's an avid archaeologist, an armchair archaeologist, as it were. He has read all of the masters, and apparently Perrin has a copy here. Well, the Foundation has a copy of a work that Dorwin doesn't have and wants a copy of. But yes, Philip is correct. Whenever he is pressed, he deflects, and he deflects into archaeology, and then he explains the scientific method. He explains the scientific method to us as he sees it, which is to read all of the masters and then judge who's correct by having read them, not by investigating further, looking for evidence, or, doing any science.
Which seems to be a theme going on in this book also.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And a theme for the whole Encyclopedia Galactica and all the people running it.
Yes.
And everything.
Yes.
Oh, well, we skipped over the coolest part, because what he's really interested in is this book by Lameth, which talks about the origins of humanity. And it seems that after 50 or who knows how many thousands of years, that this galactic empire has forgotten what the origins of humanity were. We have no idea what our first planet was. And he mentioned all these things.
Including the correct answer.
Which I thought was great. Alpha Centauri, which is our neighbor closest.
The correct answer.
It might be. No. It's
yeah.
Our closest star, Sol, and 61 Cygni, which I thought was really, really interesting. And so he's interested in finding out or obtaining a copy of this book by Lameth, which was published like 800 years ago, which I think was the last relevant
entry. Yeah, it was the last entry into the field.
And this guy didn't have it. And I think 18, you might be right. It's his personal objective here might be completing his collection.
Get that book. Yeah.
Just to get that one book?
Yeah.
That's the whole reason for coming here?
It might be.
It might be because
I mean, that's his bag, right?
He's been to Anacreon. He knows what's going to happen.
So I will remind you guys that Hardin said in the first or second chapter that nuclear power was 50,000 years old. Let's just use that as a rough calculation, okay? It's 50,000 years old. And let's say that it started in 1950 just for fun, okay? You know, if you assume that to be roughly accurate, then that means 40,000 years passed between 1950 and the beginning of the Galactic Empire. So is that enough time for you to lose track of where humanity came from?
Well, now with computers, we're thinking, things are going to be more solid and it's going to be in the cloud and we'll be able to access it at any time.
If you have the ability to colonize a galaxy, you have some pretty serious technology, some of which has memory of its own, right?
And think about that, the period of expansion where we have no idea. I mean, the transition between a single planet to a galactic empire,
40,000 years.
At minimum, we have no idea. Minimum.
40,000. I mean, that's rough, but it's. I don't know. It seems fast.
But records are lost. Records are recycled. People forget these things. It's very, very, very believable that we have no idea where we came from.
Well, I think it's believable that people wouldn't remember, but I don't think it's believable that, the records would have been lost.
I don't think it's believable that galactic archaeology couldn't have figured it out.
That's definitely a thing. All right.
Noah's Ark wasn't on Earth, by the way. Think about that.
It is the Earth. Oh my God, mind blown.
No, we came to Earth on Noah's Ark.
Oumuamua.
Think about that. That's why the flood won't hit the whole world ever again.
All right. Let's get back on track. Hardin has been trying to get information from Lord Dorwin and failing, but he tries one more time before they're, done for the day or whatnot. He says, hey, about that meltdown on Planet 5 of Gamma Andromeda. What happened? And Dorwin tells him, oh, who really knows? It broke down a long time ago, and then the repairs weren't done really well, and something went bad.
Really, the government is seriously considering placing several restrictions on the indiscriminate use of nuclear power.
All right, let's talk about the rebellions.
Well,
the Peripheries rebellions.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, is this in this chapter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a galactic treaty that Dorwin says proves that the Periphery is not independent. He's basically spinning it. He's spinning the news right here for us, right?
They have considerable freedom from action. Yes, I suppose so, considerable. But that scarcely matters. The Empire is far better off with the Periphery thrown on its own resources. As it is more or less. They ain't any good to us, Most barbarous planets. Scarcely civilized.
Scarcely civilized.
Scarcely. That's how he sees these other planets.
Anacreon and other provinces used to be so incredibly powerful, but now they're not. And
They're in decline.
They are in decline.
Everything's in decline.
Everything's in decline. And
anyway, yeah. I kind of said it before, right? We're just seeing the lack of information and the lack of society and the lack of the planet's power is just waning. And it's marching on down the line, right?
Well, Lord Dorwin personifies that. He's incredibly sharp in one way. Let's call it every single character in here, besides Hardin, is high intelligence, low wisdom.
Right.
Well, his explanation of science was disturbing.
Very.
And he's obviously interested in the subject, but he's absolutely unwilling to do any work. He's only willing to do the bare minimum to be a dilettante, essentially.
Well,
the only work to do is to study the past.
Right? Exactly.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
If you don't study the past, you don't have a foundation, I guess, in this guy's mind. And even if you have that foundation, there's nowhere to go after that. I mean, the experts have spoken.
The work has been done, yeah.
If you're in college or even as a graduate student, all you do is you research a lot of what somebody else has done, and then you write a paper over it. But as a PhD student, you have to create. You have to find anew. You have to discover something and produce something that nobody else has ever produced before, even in a small measure, on some value. And that's not what the Lord is doing. He's like, oh, these guys produced that. I'll just read their works and I'll make my own decision. Well, that's not producing anything.
So that's not science. A few weeks later, at another meeting of the Board of Trustees, an ultimatum has come from Anacreon.
My understanding is that Peren independently contacted Anacreon to tell them that, oh, you cannot mess with us because we are subjects of the Emperor. Meanwhile, it's implied, and correct me if you disagree, the Emperor has already had negotiations with the King of Anacreon, absolving them of all responsibility. Hardin already knows that they are on their own and they cannot rely upon the Empire for any help whatsoever. And then Peren had to go out and antagonize them, so they have to respond, as they will, with hard militaristic subjection.
An ultimatum.
Exactly. But they disguise it with all these friendly words like, oh, well, everything's going to be fine unless you give us a hard time.
Hardin has the ultimatum analyzed with symbol logic, and it basically says, give us your stuff or we're going to come and take it.
Which is really interesting because he said, at the division of logic, which would produce it in normal English, he's like, I get you, you scientists don't understand it, so I'm going to produce it with symbols. I don't comprehend how they could produce it with symbols without producing it with letters, but he's trying to communicate in the simplest manner possible because these people just don't get it.
He has also analyzed the treaty between the Empire and Anacreon, and it turns out the agreement made by Lord Dorwin is such that Anacreon has complete and utter independence, and nothing that they do is going to stir the ire of the Empire. Nothing.
Obligations of Anacreon to the Empire? None. Powers of the Empire over Anacreon? None.
All right, so he also applied this symbol logic analysis to a recording that he made surreptitiously of every word that Lord Dorwin said. So this is probably why he was chasing after Lord Dorwin and was upset that he had lost sight of him, was that he had been recording everything that he said for analysis at a future date. Anyway, the analysis, what is the sum total of the analysis?
He said basically nothing.
Yeah.
Everything he said was at one time stating one thing and then later on just going against it. And it's just platitudes and things to get him to not have to really say anything.
A lot of drivel, and then anything that was a statement, a firm statement was later canceled out with another firm statement.
Completely non-committal.
Yeah.
But the funny part was when he said, I took the liberty of recording all his statements. And did you catch that? Where in the writing of Hardin's words, they intentionally omitted the R from liberty?
No.
No, I didn't notice that either.
Okay. I thought it was funny because he's like saying, oh, I took the liberty of...
I'm going to have to reread this chapter.
Of recording all of his statements.
So Hardin is urging the board that they need to be self-reliant in dealing with this crisis that they're finding themselves in. The Empire, he says, is falling into stagnation. The Foundation is essentially doing the same thing, as is evident by the fact that nobody is actually doing any science. They're just doing gathering and collecting work. That's all they're doing. And then again, we're reminded that the vault is going to be opening up in 6 days, and let's just wait and see what Selden says. So there's Peren, who refuses to acknowledge that there's a problem and makes things worse. There's Hardin, who says they need to stand on their own 2 feet and solve the problem themselves. And then there's Farah, who says, let's see what Harry Selden has to say. Let's just wait and see. Let's just wait.
I mean, well, you've come all this way, you might as well, right?
Yes, in a sense,
with a
yes.
few more days, no matter who you are.
Well, I mean, Hardin's thinking to himself that, like, yeah, sure, Selden saw, he's this masterful psychologist. If he saw this crisis coming 50 years ago, why didn't he tell them? Why not allow them to prepare? And why not send more than one psychologist to Terminus? Which I'd say is probably evidence that, he didn't come. He never came.
Well,
right?
but he also evaluated that psychologist as, I wouldn't say second rate, but he said he didn't teach anything beyond the absolute rudiments.
Well, one of his students was Hardin.
Yes. And Hardin said, I'm not learning anything here. I'm going to move on.
Not enough. Yeah, he was only learning theory. He wanted to put it into practice, so he became a politician. So essentially what it looks like is that all of this is part of the plan. And that if these people had gotten too much information, they might have disrupted the plan. Because if you recall, the civilization being analyzed by psychohistory cannot be aware of it. That's one of the rules.
Yes.
Right.
So,
and that's kind of how I walked away from this chapter, which I thought was really, really kind of a confusing chapter.
No, you got to read it again, bud, because I get it. It's like Selden didn't want anyone in power who was capable of thinking for themselves.
I am aware of this fact, but that's because I read the following 2 chapters.
Oh, okay.
All right, chapter 6, yes? Hardin is in conversation with Lee. Does Lee have a first name?
Johann
Lee. So Hardin is in conversation with Johann Lee. He has set into motion a coup tomorrow. And this is right before the arrival of the delegation from Anacreon, which is in 2 days. So today, talk. Tomorrow, coup. Next day, visit from Anacreon. And Hardin plans to take all ruling power away from the Board of Trustees. Although I don't think he plans on getting rid of them. I think he wants them to continue their job.
There's, how many people on this planet? And only 150,000 of them or whatever are dealing with this, science stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody else is a family, and they care about the day-to-day.
It's their home.
Funny, Phil's talking about Perrin only caring about the day-to-day and getting this thing done and only staying in the here and the now. But it's the people that are supporting that endeavor they're on the outside. If it wasn't for Hardin, nobody would be, I know you said it was politician, but there would be nobody talking for them whatsoever.
Right. Asimov described the treatment of the Board of Trustees as authoritarian. They were used to telling people what to do, and their organization is not a democracy. They've gotten away all this time with just being told what to do and following the rules. And it's getting complicated for them now because it's becoming political. Chapter 7. In the Vault. Selden appears before the Board of Trustees and Hardin.
What is he? He's immobile in this.
He's in a wheelchair. He's just like the cover of the book on your screen there. It's probably,
very good.
It's probably that image right there.
Yeah.
With a blanket over his legs to keep his legs warm. And
he has like a virtual book that he sets down on this table and it like disappears and he'll pick it up from time to time.
Hi, kids.
When he's like reading from it. Yeah. I feel like this is like, Walt Disney coming back after being refrigerated.
Exactly.
Except it's obviously or even better yet, it's like a Michael Jackson hologram. He's performing for us again.
Yeah.
This is just a recorded message, though, right?
It is a pre-recorded message.
What he says, like the encyclopedia is not the end goal.
He says it's a fraud.
This is a fraud,
and it has always been.
But at the same time, he is talking about how civilization is going to end, and that everything they're doing is to make it bounce back faster, right?
Yes. It's basically a monologue. Harry Selden just reminds us of the fact that he made all of these predictions, a lot of which are now coming true. But he says that the people of Terminus have been forced down a path leading to a series of crises, which, though difficult, can be overcome, and at the end of which will rise the Second Galactic Empire. Their situation that he predicted was the dissolution of the empire starting at the periphery, the loss of technology, which, the nuclear power, etc., and that they're cut off from resources completely, and this was all by design. He wanted them. He wanted these specific people to be in this exact situation because. And he says that the solution is obvious. And guess who sees the solution?
Hey guys, I'm starting to get an epiphany here between what Yule said and what
what I said.
Seldon predicted all these events based on science and math and predictability and knowledge. But when you create models, you can only create models based on facts. Now you have this entire population of people that don't have any concept of the facts. They only understand the prediction. And when the prediction comes true, or potentially comes true, there's a cult following. Oh my God, it's like a mind blow. Dude, this is a mind blow for me. This guy's creating a religion. I'm sorry, I have no idea. Does this happen? Is this guy worship in the future?
Couldn't tell you.
My mind blow is that, yes, he is becoming an oracle, a seer, a god, something.
I think that anybody that values science the way that Harry Seldon did would not want to become a deity, and so would not set himself up as a deity. So I think you're incorrect.
You can't help how other. I'm only now really learning this in life. I've had a lot of different experiences listening to people talk about this. I mean, Harry Seldon did. I mean, he did his best to make sure that everybody that listened was on board, but you can't choose who in the future is going to pay attention to your work. And even though you might have an expected people that will pay attention to it, read it, watch it, whatever that work may be, you don't have any control over that. It might be an entirely different group of people that you never even knew existed, or that you never wanted to even sniff your stuff. And that's what he has now, possibly. I mean, he might have put everybody in this situation so that they oh God, I'm doing my Yule thing. I know
you are doing your Yule thing. It's fine. I understand what you're saying, but I will remind you that he's very clear in this last chapter that everything that has come to be has been foreseen.
You can't help if someone looks at you as a god then.
You can't, but it's not something that he would have done on purpose.
Right.
But no, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
But Perrin is an acolyte all the way, right?
Well, what you're getting at can't be revealed right now. So it's a far-flung guess that we have to keep our eye on, but it's not something that we can really discuss right now because we don't know right now, and we won't find out for a long time.
We don't know right now, but it's okay it's fun to talk about because I think people are already starting to occultize Seldon, but.
And he chose the people that were going to go to Terminus. So he chose the people that were likely to not do more than just listen and say yes.
So he uses mathematics to make this stuff happen. Or
predict.
Sometimes to make this stuff happen. Sometimes to predict what's going to happen. Sometimes predicting and making stuff happen. Going back to religion and how people proselytize and make something.
Have you heard of Harry Seldon? Let me tell you about Harry Seldon.
Let me tell you about Harry Seldon. He's a great man, and he predicted all these things, and he told us the way to be, So he chose these people to come to this planet, right? They're going to continue his work. They're going to be only science-based. But even the surrounding area of people who don't follow that type of thing, are these part of his model?
They were selected by him.
They can't even mine iron from the earth properly because they don't have the know-how. I mean, they have the know-how.
They chose the planet based on the fact that it had poor resources.
That's so that nobody would really care about them again.
He wanted them in this particular situation.
I think what Yule's saying is everybody on this planet, they're knowers, not doers.
I mean, I think that's the conclusion that Hardin came to as well. They were satisfied with the same kind of dilettante attitude that Lord Dorwin had. Maybe to read, but not to really do any thinking on their own. I think the mayor was the thing that was predicted. I think that the rise of Hardin, which was, the very first part of the chapter, the section, Salvor Hardin, the first in a long line of blah, blah, blah. I think that's what Harry Seldon predicted. If given the circumstances, one will rise who will follow through and defeat this first crisis. I think that he saw that and he predicted it. It's this guy. It's Hardin.
And this first crisis is Anacreon, and they're getting in their crap.
And it's got something to do with nuclear power. And Seldon said the solution was obvious. And at the end of the chapter, Hardin says the solution was obvious.
He does that a lot at the end of his chapters.
Yeah, it's a nice little hook, right?
I mean, I obviously is doing that for a hook, sure.
Yeah,
but
that SOB.
It's like, the answer was revealed on the next page.
Yeah.
Next story. It's in the next story, which might be 3-4 months from now.
Yeah, it's clear, but you're not smart enough to figure it out, so keep reading.
Well, I mean, okay, yes, exactly. But it's clear to the character. It's clear to them. It's not clear to me.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. It's like, what's he going to do? Is he going to turn the fact that they have nuclear power and, like, take over their society? What? Because he did suggest that they weren't going to be in power very long. They were going to come in, and that somehow the tables were going to be turned, and Anacreon was going to be the slave.
Even when Gul Dornick was arrested, he met up with Harry Seldon. And he's all, I'll see you tomorrow in class or whatever it was, I'll see you at work tomorrow. Yeah. And then he's like, no, he didn't. And then the next chapter. What do you mean? I mean, it wasn't as stupid as no, he didn't, but.
No, sir.
That's his little hooks. And even like within the chapter, yeah.
I suspect that was common practice for the pulp writers.
Sure.
The hooks and stuff.
Maybe I'm being hyper conscious here, but like when I see what Harry Seldon has done, all I can think of is like he is creating, not predicting. He's guiding and creating and predicting and guiding. Which, if you think about what that is over thousands of years, that's
Muad'Dib.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I've told you about how like this book right here, Foundation series, has reverberations through the sci-fi genre forever. This is it. You've got somebody, and Harry Seldon is doing it with mathematics. Muad'Dib does it with superconscious. It doesn't really matter. The point is, you've got somebody who is capable of influencing events for thousands of years because he can influence those events for thousands of years, even after his death. That's incredible.
So I'm assuming Terminus is going to really rise up, right?
I don't know. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what happens.
So let's go back to the first section, the very first entry from the Galactic, the Encyclopedia Galactica. If you guys will notice, that's on page. Hold on, I'm flipping there. Like page 1. It's on page 3. Look where the edition was published.
Oh, Terminus. Very Terminus. Good. It's 116th. 1,020 years into the FE, the Foundation era, that 116th edition is published on Terminus. So, obviously, the Foundation does not dissolve. It does not fall into disrepair. It does not disappear. It is not taken over and destroyed. It persists for at least 1,020 years. So, would that suggest that Terminus, if Harry Seldon's right, and everything goes to crap,
and
that
it is,
Terminus is unaffected in the end?
I mean, it has to be affected because it's part of the first crisis.
Everything's affected, right? I mean, there's things you have to overcome, but if they're still continuing for like 1,000 years longer to make this book, then the ultimate end didn't actually occur, or it has yet to occur still.
The ultimate end is yet to occur, I am pretty sure.
After
he said that historians would draw a line, and
he did,
and it would be like between this point and this point, in this last 50 years, the future historians would draw a line and say that in this moment, the Galactic Empire fell.
I just find it funny, it's always the history of the winners, right?
That is relatively true, yes.
Harry Seldon's trying to write it ahead of time, though.
Yes, he's trying to guide a desired history into being.
If you can do that from beyond the grave, that's pretty godlike.
I think when we have genuine artificial general intelligence, that kind of stuff will become relatively commonplace. It's just a guess, but... All right. Do you guys have anything to add for this section? Section 2, part 2 of this novel.
I love you.
I love you too, buddy.
No, I don't. I think I have a reread in this one for sure. Definitely in some parts.
I'm not rereading it. I refuse.
I am. I'm going over part 5 one more time. I just have to.
If you're going to go over it, I knew when I was reading it and taking notes, I was like, this one's clumsy.
It is, and I think part of it's also, it's like you said before, he doesn't really do too much to make you care or really look at a character differently than any other one. They're speaking their lines. We have established that Perrin is... He's a main speaker. He's single-minded. The mayor is the mayor, but he seems to care and he's paying attention to what nobody else wants to, and that there are threats outside. I guess everybody does have their own characters by the end of this, but it doesn't really come across so vividly when you're reading the book. And so when you get a chapter like number 5, where we're speaking to a bunch of characters at the same time, and there's a lot of thought and effort being put into what he's trying to say, it can be tough. It's tough to care. It's not tough to necessarily understand. There's nothing foreign being spoken here. In fact, there's nothing super sci-fi in what we're talking about in this whole book so far, really.
No, it's really pretty understandable.
These people want this. There's just this extra stuff that's that's playing out.
I would like to clarify that for section 5, at least, the complication, in my opinion, did not arise from Asimov's writing. It arose more when I tried to reorganize it for a summary.
I hear what you're saying.
When I tried to apply my job to it, it was difficult. It was mainly because he interwove so much information through dialogue and his reveal. The order of the revelations were such that it was just complicated, because if you want to just blatantly tell somebody how something worked, you go in order, right? You go bam, 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 bam. That's how it happened. Makes logical sense. But that's not how it was revealed.
Well, no, he's writing
But it was revealed in such a way that I understood it. But yeah, what's his name? Jord Farah. He's described as 300 pounds. He has this big red mustache.
A booming voice.
And he thinks that Selden is going to sweep out of the future and save them. Hey, Philip, do you remember reading that book by Jack Vance, Future Tense?
Yeah, I love that, except for
one of the stories dealt with a bunch of astronauts that were being trained up by this old salt.
Oh my God, yes, I love that story.
Do you remember that the main character in that story was not recommended to become an astronaut because he didn't believe the threat was real? He believed that the salty old sailor was always going to make sure that they survived.
Oh, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
That is Jord Farah. That is his attitude. He believes that Selden is going to solve the problem for them. They don't need to worry about nothing.
Oh my God. I love you. That's an incredible connection. Yeah, I get it.
That's why we read... Oh, excuse me. That's why we read stuff and talk about it later.
But Harry Seldon is not offering any solutions, right? He's just saying, hey.
He is providing them with information. He has set the stage, and he's giving them detailed facts. All of this stuff was predicted. There's a crisis in front of you. It's up to you to solve it. It looks like Hardin is prepared to do so because he's like, I know, I got the answer, guys. Let me take care of this. He's already performed the coup, so he's already in a position of power to take action, and tomorrow's the day, right? Tomorrow's the big day. Anacreon's fleet lands or whatever, and there's Hardin ready to go. So
as long as this isn't 50 years in the future.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea what to expect at this point. You know, like, do we go 1,000 years?
We do have an inkling because in our Discord server, we were talking to one of our listeners, and he was saying Harry Seldon is in the 3rd chapter.
I thought he said Hardin was in the...
He did say Hardin. Got the wrong name. Sorry.
All right.
Hardin is in the 3rd chapter.
All right.
So...
Okay, well, that's good
called
to
the
know,
Mares.
Sort of.
So, like, so we get to the sum of, like, why I loved and hated this chapter.
Section. Part.
Chapter, section, part 2. Let's call it part 2, because that's what it's called.
Yep.
It really delved into the difference between, like, politics and religion and public perception and hopes and wishes and a million human emotions, a million different other things. But what I hated about it the most was the scientists of the Galactic Encyclopedia were just completely blind. It hurt me. Like, every single time they talked, it hurt me. Their ambivalence towards the threat, their refusal to accept things outside of that. And it hurt me not only because this was a book, but because I've seen it. I mean, you've got scientists so entrenched in their beliefs that they absolutely refuse to accept new information because they think they're right.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a human failing, too. It's not just scientists.
No, it's not just scientists.
Yeah, but scientists are supposed to come up with an idea, test it and test it and test it, and even when it gets proven, you test it again, right?
Well, that was the hypocrisy of this entire chapter, is that a scientist, by philosophy, is always open-minded by philosophy. And you have these guys, they are not scientists. They may be scientifically minded.
They're trained, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not performing any science, and they haven't done so in 50 years.
No, exactly. They're not creating science. I mean...
And like the Empire, it's stagnant.
Oh, yeah. Hardin made that comparison in chapter 5 or so.
He did, and that hit really home with me, and I see it, and it galls me that when you encounter... It galled, yes.
You did it again.
It bothers me that when you encounter somebody who thinks they know everything, right? They think they know everything. I'm like, oh my gosh. As a scientist, your philosophy should be always keeping a part of your mind open to something else. Always.
Always being willing to take in new information. Modifying the old worldview.
Throughout this chapter, they refer to themselves as scientists, but none of them, not a single one of them, in my definition, were scientists. Scientists, advanced sciences. These guys were just like, librarians, historians.
So was Hardin the most scientific of the lot?
I think he was, not by practice, but by mentality. He was a self-proclaimed non-scientist, but...
He saw clearly. I mean, I don't know if he was doing any science, but he definitely saw clearly, whereas no one else did.
Well, he reminded me more of... not that I'm sure you're supposed to necessarily, but he was most reminiscent of Harry Seldon in the 1st chapter.
Go on, explain. I mean, I think I disagree with you, though.
The Raven, the Doomsayer, Harry Seldon... was a lot like the mayor, Hardin. I mean, they go about their thing differently, but he sees that there's a danger out there and nobody else is willing to pay attention to it.
But he did it in his mind without a model, a mathematical model. Seldon did it with a mathematical model, but Hardin is doing it in his mind.
I see the comparison that you're drawing, Yule. I agree with that. That's
well, I mean,
solid.
The two chapters kind of sync up that way. You know, there's an objective that's trying to be met, and there's all these other things that are going around trying to stop that objective from being met. Meanwhile, the person that's, leading it is having a lot of problems when it comes to making it happen.
Yes.
And it just depends on what that objective is. But, I mean, ultimately, it's Harry Seldon foresaw some doom. The mayor is foreseeing some major problems that is going to affect life on Terminus.
And they're both taking actions to limit the damage.
Yeah, treasonous actions, I hear.
That's what I hear. All right, well, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Thank you for joining us. Look for episode 3. It will be out on the 23rd of February. And yeah, keep reading, everyone.
Love you guys. Is that where I'm supposed to talk now?
Bye.
Come on, you'll do better than that, buddy.
Bye, everybody.